Welcome to China Focus, I'm Shelley Zhang. What does democracy mean to Chinese people? What do they think of when they think of democracy? A recent book by Zhang Mingshu from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences goes into that topic. It's called What Kind of Democracy Do Chinese People Want? It details a survey he conducted in 4 major Chinese cities, and the conclusions he comes to are quite interesting. Here today to talk about this topic, we have China analysts Jason Ma and Chen Zhifei. So what were some of the overall things he was talking about in this particular survey he was holding?
Right, I think generally speaking, he is talking about the Chinese, basically after the survey, he is concluded in a way like, first of all, there are surprisingly number of people who he called that lefter kind of left-leaning people, which is more like anti-democratic kind of form. So that the percentage is 38%, more than 38%. And the middle is big, of course, that's 51.5%. The even more surprising thing is the right wing. Right wing is like somewhat kind of a full democratic kind of form, which is 8%. Which is
right wing and this like leftist or right wing is different than we talk about in the U.S., right?
No, exactly. I think that the traditional Chinese interpretation in mainland is left is more aligned with Maoist thought, like big government, socialist dreams that was concocted by the communists. Rightists, as reflected in a famous anti-rightist movement in the 1950s, means that you are pro-Western values, Western thoughts.
So that's what it means in the context he's talking about.
That's used by the Chinese regime in general.
Right. I mean, but of course, I have to make a point very clear at this moment. This is a survey they did on the street. Mm-hmm. And what surprised him is this is a quite anti-democratic comparing even in China in 1988, which is before the Tiananmen massacre.
Yeah.
And so basically China on the street, people are talking about, they are more lean against democratic system. And so this survey by itself is questionable in the sense of he's doing on the street, mm-hmm. and the political kind of overall environment at these 2 years. One is 1988. At that moment, the Chinese regime, CCP, is talking about political reform. And now it's 2011 when the Chinese regime refused to talk about political reform. So the bigger political environment will have a direct consequence on how people dare to answer on the street.
And the results are equally shocking, if anything, because Jason has cited some statistics, like the left, west, rightist group, the percentages. Mm-hmm. And also, qualitatively, his conclusion was the following. The type of democracy on the minds of Chinese was moralistic control, ruling, was ahead of rule of law.
So that means it doesn't matter if you follow the law as long as you have high
moralistic
morals,
ruling was dictated by, defined, interpreted by the communist regime. Basically, if you're in line with communist dictums or their dogmas, you're fine. That's my interpretation.
So that's what moralistic means.
Moralist means that because you're deemed a moral person in the eyes of the party. And anti-corrupt campaign and the monitoring by the masses was ahead of the actual citizenship's right and freedom. That's again a far cry from the Western value system and democracy. Third, of course, even more shocking, they said consultation is ahead of voting. Basically, you can make all kinds of noises as you can, via the platform of political conferences, consultation conferences, as we know, but the party retained the right of making decisions ultimately. They're nothing but just noises. And lastly, also again, very instructive, he said the result shows the Chinese want Chinese version rather than foreign version of democracy. That's again something leaving us for a lot of discussion.
Well, here let me ask you this. So those conclusions that you talked about, those are conclusions that he drew from the survey?
He drew from the survey because he had 30 questions in the questionnaire, mm-hmm. 20 same from 1988, making it very highly similar to the 1988 result. And the questionnaires contain these questions that could help him infer the conclusion from the answers.
So you would say, but doesn't this show basically like the things that concern the Chinese people most, like corruption issues or
Right,
something
definitely,
like that?
definitely. That's the reason he draw conclusion. Chinese pay more attention to how to curb the corruption among the officials than individuals' right. So basically, I think this survey result is not really kind of a meaningful survey in the sense of the Western kind of sense, because Chinese people have no experience about democratic kind of experience. So when you ask people what's the flavor of crab when you never eat crab, or what kind of flavor you prefer, and when you never eat it. So basically, the survey itself is like fiction for Chinese. They just kind of use a very vague idea about, and also another kind of interesting is all the answer very much align with the mainstream communist idea in the media. So basically, I think this more referendum of the successful campaign of Chinese CCP regime in the past 20 years. They did change people's mind, make the people think along their kind of education line.
Let me ask, both of you mentioned that he did the similar survey in '88. Right. So what were the results in '88 compared to now?
At that moment, people are more enthusiastic about democratic idea, and the people just a lot of idea listed. They really want to embrace the Western style of democratic system.
That's also one thing that's really shocking to people, readers like me, because that means Chinese people as a whole body has decided to step away from the demarcation line of democracy. They were much closer in the run-up to the 1989 pro-democracy movement. At that time, it's also consistent with my perception that people were more ready for democracy. Now, after 20 years incessant and very intensive brainwashing, people somehow have been convinced that what they currently have in China is the best system for them. Of course, it's based on some promises, materialistic promises passed out by the regime. And even this viewpoint have somehow been accepted by some Western scholars in the form of Beijing consensus. They believe as long as you can feed people, you can give them certain magnitude of political freedom, for instance, freedom to share their views on the internet, you are a good governance.
What I want to ask is, if you said, okay, the Chinese government, Chinese people think that their form of governance that they currently have is the best system in the world, how do they hold that in the same thought as, well, we have so much problems with corruption, you know, all these official, like all the pollution,
right,
food safety, how do they hold those thoughts?
This is the most interesting about this whole thing. I mean, basically, I can see such a successful brainwash system is working in the past 20 years, so that people can at a kind of the same time complain about anything they are, pollution in the air, food, education system, and retirement, social benefit. Everything is a problem they know. Meanwhile, they still think their system is one of the best.
I think you have to really give credit to their propaganda organ, because in the last 20 years, the Western economy had been bonded with Chinese economy, giving Chinese people a lot of chance to see how the Western economy really works. And they found that the Western economy tend to have these up and downs as well, especially as evidenced in a recent financial crisis. So they found, okay, Chinese actually would not have that kind of trouble if they don't have a Wall Street of their own version. But on the other hand, they think, well, our government can do a lot of things that Western people don't have, because they believe in the propaganda.
Yeah. Basically, there is a story talking about a very poor farmer. He has a problem to find enough food for his kids. But when he was talking with a reporter, he was a foreign reporter, he was joking like, I heard your American is borrowing money from us. You totally depends on us to survive. Which is partially kind of maybe have some facts in it, but he never really think he have problem to find the food. So basically, this is so how successful the brainwash system over there. So basically, they begin to have this kind of thing working in the past 20 years. People even begin to think, although I'm so having problem, but I'm still better probably in US.
So does that kind of the thing about Western style democracy versus Chinese style democracy is?
So there is no democracy in China.
They are clueless about the democratic personal freedom ideas, the origins, and how they disseminated being accepted in the West. I remember there was very hot and widely followed history teacher in China. His name is Yuan Tengfei, and his video was banned in China. He had one class talking about origins of Western democratic ideas, starting with French philosophers, Rousseau and Montesquieu, whatever. Chinese people didn't know that. Chinese people simply thought democracy, as the word appears in Chinese, 民主, means the majority of the masses dictate. However, they didn't know that was only the superficial form. The Western idea of democracy built upon the values that emphasize fraternity, equality, freedom, as espoused by those French philosophers. So if you had a band of bandits and the majority elected the guy who was the leader, it's still a bandit, it's not a republic. Chinese people didn't follow that. They thought, a lot of people, even among intellectuals, they thought the whole country, America, was hijacked by Wall Streeters. They thought, okay, it's not a democracy either. So they got a little cynical about the Western idea. They thought, actually, what we have, of course, not perfect. We have corruption, but you have corruption still. That's, again, a slanted view, some kind of prejudices, biases instilled by the media in China.
Right, but I guess the damage of this thing is at the end, this author gave Chinese 3.3 over 10 as the
out of 10?
Out of 10
Wow,
as the kind of current level
measure for democracy awareness
or political kind of awareness of Chinese.
So he's saying that Chinese people are not actually that
Not
aware
ready.
of democracy.
Ready for democracy.
Not
So-
ready for democracy. Oh, I thought you meant not aware of democracy.
Not kind of ready because their quality is a 3.3 over 10 out of 10.
I didn't know if you could even judge people about
Right,
how
basically,
ready. Okay.
I think that's the very, very kind of welcomed kind of conclusion by the Chinese regime because they for so many years they do have this kind of
I think that's
That
really
Chinese people are not ready. It's almost like Jackie Chan saying, oh, you know, Chinese people, we need to be controlled.
Yeah, the Hong Kong star. Yeah, I knew that. It's really disgraceful and really despicable. So basically, they are saying that we can allow certain kind of democracy within our party hierarchy. The party members can elect the leaders, and
But they don't really elect the leaders anyway.
They don't want to extend it to the common people. It's like a tiered system, noble versus the common, and that's kind of insulting. But the Chinese people somehow accepted it.
So what the both of you are saying is basically this is very good news for the party.
Yeah, that's justification for the current status quo.
Okay, thank you both for coming here and speaking with us about this topic today. And thanks for watching. For more on this and other issues in China, join us at ntd.tv.